All right. So this episode is part of the Candid Conversation series that I'll host through the Unraveling Together podcast. We'll share the full video on YouTube and I'll release it in bite-sized chunks through LinkedIn and on the podcast itself. The Unraveling Together community is built upon the foundation that women are stronger together. Women are wired for collaboration and we bond through shared experiences. Now we come preloaded with software to work together instead of against one another. But society tells us a different story. We're told that women can't work with other women. Women will stab you in the back the first chance they get, and they'll share your deepest, darkest if given the chance. While the woman behind this microphone and the women who share this screen with me feel differently, and this conversation is proof thereof. Hello, Erin. Thank you so much for joining me for my first candid conversation through Unraveling Together. So good to see you.
You too, Sam. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. So Erin and I have known each other for a bit. I'm going to give you a little bit on her background, a little bit about her, and then we're just going to dive into it. And as you could imagine with the term candid conversations, we're just going to see where this baby rolls because Erin and I are never, ever, we're never able to get off the phone quickly. Yeah. And we were talking the other day and we're like, we should completely just do this as a podcast, have a conversation. So I'm so happy you were able to join me. So Erin is a mother, a wife, a sister, and a fierce and loyal friend to many. She is also not afraid to stand alone when it's the right thing to do. Just a woman after my own heart. She is a seasoned BS flag wielder, as I love to say, and she is, that's really one of the things that attracts me to her. She's currently a financial crimes compliance educator. She is a phenomenal educator, being able to take massively complex issues and break them down and make them relatable. So I think she'll be outstanding at talking about, we're not going to get into the financial crimes today, we're going to get into just the experience as a person. But I wanted you all to know that for the last 10 years, Erin has, it is Erin O'Loughlin. She has worked inside the financial crimes and compliance industry in a variety of roles, from AML investigations, which is anti-money laundering, to scouring the dark web markets on the Tor network, which is the Onion router. And that's a free and open source software for enabling anonymous communication. This is the key. Because that's what attracts scumbags worldwide to use it for evil, unfortunately. Now, Erin and I met when she was ferreting out crypto fraud or cryptocurrency fraud and money laundering as an investigator for a large cryptocurrency firm. And then I was in the anti-human trafficking nonprofit space. We met and it was like, kapow, right? Like we knew we were going to be buds. And I'm so glad that we've stayed in contact. Prior to all her experience in large banking and financial firms, she was an operations officer in the intelligence community for 10 years. She was posted both overseas and domestically. She specialized in counter terrorism, conflict resolution, mediation, and due diligence. Pretty fascinating background. I love it. Erin and I, as she has discovered recently, we are both Enneagram 8s. And so that's how I think, someone who's really grounded and a fierce advocate for the vulnerable when you meet them. And I think that's just how you and I really connected there. I'll put some information about what the Enneagram is for all of you that are watching. If you're curious, like, what is this Enneagram thing? It's fascinating. And the more we understand ourselves, I think the more full circle we can become in the world. So what did you think about learning that you were an Enneagram 8, Erin? How did that line with you?
I had no idea what, I've taken so many, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I've taken so many different personality tests because of my government work in the intel community. You have to at least partially start to know yourself in order to assess and understand other people. And this was it's similar to the others that I took. And I wasn't sure if it was going to come out with a category or with, I actually like taking them because, I'm slightly different each time. And ever since the start of the pandemic in the last 20 months or so, I know I'm a different person. I know for a fact I am radically different. So it's interesting to take them now. So this is the first one I've taken since then.
Sure. Cool. Well, I love that. And it's just one of those ways of understanding ourselves better. And you nailed it, where it's like, to understand others out there, it is really great to understand where we come from, what our basic operating system is, so to speak. And I think it's helped me personally these last couple of years of really digging deeper into myself. It's helped me understand my motivations, what I do and why I have these and like why there are certain things I just can't get past or haven't been able to until I really unpacked them. And sometimes that's the hardest part because it's like, oh, I gotta do the feeling stuff.
Failings.
Okay, here we go, but it's like once you do that, once you take down that mask, or for me it's that shield of protecting from everything, it's like, oh, that's what it feels like to breathe.
And I love these because I have a social work degree. So
Oh,
I
that's
got
right.
my
Yes.
social work degree way back in the day. I'm ancient, so I'm not gonna say when I graduated. For how long I've been in the workforce, I really thought I was going to save the world by being a social worker. I really wanted to work with homeless, as well as the MR community, under the DSM-4, which is now 5. It's the mental retardation community. I worked with MR adults when I first got out of college, so I absolutely loved that job, but I couldn't make a living out of it. I really couldn't. And when the government came along to say, because I was living in Northern Virginia area, when the government came along and said, we'd like to have you come on in, I really didn't have a choice. I
Okay.
didn't. I had to take it. And luckily I learned that I could take those skills that I learned in college and the classes and the group, even a group therapy class I took, which was my favorite. And it was just, I just sat around and got the chance to talk about things that were a problem to me or whatever. And I listened to that in my course, my class, for my classmates, and it helped me to actually go forward. And I was actually a better case officer for it.
I can absolutely respect and understand that. My background being in holistic health, having the ability to look at things from this holistic perspective and, digging back to the source and, how do things operate at source? And then what could have happened that is now compounded? And it's like this lays over, this lays over. And next thing you know, you've got all these competing forces affecting something. And you and I work with humans, well, for the most part. So it's like in that space, you try to figure out, well, how does this human operate? And me in the coaching space, you in the investigation, and then now in more of an education role. It's like, how do you impart that education to somebody, and what kind of learner are you working with?
Yeah.
And then what's your space that day? And how are you doing mentally and physically? And as we know, these last couple of years have really led to a lot of introspection for many of us. And I think women in many ways, obviously, but we've had to redefine our roles. Parenting and the kids and what's gone on with them. Are they doing well in school? Are we now, for those of you who are paired up, are you're both working at home, and how is that? You're seeing your partner more and having to do different interactions. We're having to interact with people when we don't see them anymore in person. That's a whole different animal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We can see their faces, but it's different when you can't feel their energy or just, there's something to that, just being connected to somebody more physically that leads us on a different path.
And I will say that
Mhm.
what I do now, the financial crimes compliance education portion of
Yes.
it, I've been kind of doing this on the side for years, and I really enjoy loving going to these conferences and standing on the
Mhm.
stage, or even just in the room itself and walk up and down the aisles and engaging with people. That was where I got my energy from, and that was where I would get even more pointers from the audience, even from my job. When I'd go back, I would learn
Got
something
it.
from it, not just be the presenter. And it's tough now. I have such Zoom fatigue. I love the fact that we're on Zoom right now, but
Totally, yes.
I have such
I
screen
get that.
fatigue that we have to do these webinars, and I don't get that. Hey, I'm losing the audience. I need to switch on a dime, and I
Right.
can't do that. I had a webinar this morning, and I just thought, okay, I'll just read my script and introduce the panel, and there you go. I am so looking forward to actually doing these where I can interact and see. Okay, the panel is losing them. Let's switch it here. Let's do that. Let's throw in a question. Let's throw in a prize and things like that. So, or they're really enjoying this. Let's keep it up with this way. And it's just not happening right now. So hopefully we're getting there soon.
I hope so too. Yeah, and I feel the same. And I think that's part of humans. Again, we as women, we connect, and we're wired for that collaboration. We're also wired for the cues that we get from just looking at someone, how they're holding themselves, and it's that intuitive kind of nature that women predominantly have, and we're nurtured towards. And a lot of where we get our value, quote unquote, in society is through our relationships. Who are we out there in the world, and who are we taking care of? And most often we're taking care of everybody else, not so much ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And
Right.
you bring up how women are the ones that collaborate. Oh my gosh, I just had this conversation, and this isn't
Yes.
scripted, by the way, and I didn't do this for this podcast.
No,
We have a
no.
9-year-old daughter, and she's
Yeah.
in 4th grade, and I picked her up from school yesterday, and I asked her how much she looked forward to going back. I said, Thanksgiving break, and are you happy you're
Right.
back? And she said, I'm looking forward to Friday. And I said, well, of course you're looking forward to Friday. We all are. And she said, no, it's our class meeting. And I had forgotten this is the only teacher in our school. And from what I hear, the district, and we have a very large district, the only teacher in the school that participates in and runs a class meeting every Friday, whereas they write down something that bothered them during the
Okay.
week, and then they anonymously will put it into a hat or a box or something, and they sit in a circle, and then they take out they'll take out their picture. I don't know exactly how it works, but
Mhm.
they will read out what their problem was with another classmate or with a problem they have at home or anything that's bothering them. No subject is off limits, and they work out whatever has been a problem with their own classmates there. And she said, yeah, but mom, I have something I want to talk about with another girl, and I'll wait till Friday because it's not a big deal. And then I said, oh, who participates in that? And she said, we're the only girls ever talk. She has a good friend named Justin in the class. Justin doesn't say anything. Jacquez never says anything. And I just laughed and thought of you and went, oh yeah, that's girls talking about their feelings. But in 4th grade, they're learning how to bring out these conflicts and how to resolve them. And I just love our 4th grade teacher for this.
Yes, me too. What an ingenious thing. I mean, when you hear it, it sounds so simple and like, of course we should
Right.
be talking. And especially, I mean, this generation and the ones between where you and I are and your daughter, it's like they haven't learned even how to communicate.
No.
And I don't know, but through this thing, like you just can't get that essence.
Yeah.
And learning conflict resolution, and what an amazing, wow, what an amazing gift that teacher is giving these kids. That's so awesome.
Yep.
And it is funny that the girls are talking more, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that should be fostered. And you and I have talked about some of the issues we've had with women, and both great and both the learning situations and how challenging it can be. Some of that comes down to personality and how we view the world, and what we've been taught and modeled. And you had a really interesting take earlier when we talked about this. What did you want to kind of bring into the conversation about women working together?
Yeah, you mentioned in your opening that society says that
Mhm.
women can't work together, but we believe differently. I do believe that. I do believe differently. However, I do honestly believe that saying exists for a reason because of
Mhm.
my 40 plus years, 40 blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
years of of experiencing that very same thing.
Yes.
I went to Iraq based on the fact that I had a lot of circumstances that I had to deal with and a lot of reasons for going when I did. I was in Afghanistan, out and back and forth for so long, in Pakistan. And then I said, I got to just throw my hat in the ring for a full tour. Where am I going to go? And I even said to myself, I know who I am. I'm self-aware. I have a kind of masculine, kind of no bullshit, all that kind of, I can be tough to take. I get it. I understand that. So knowing that, where should I go where I would be get along with the best people, the amount, all these different things. And I know that I need a support network. I know that about me. I knew that in my 20s. And so I said, okay, well, my best friend at the time, she was at a base in Iraq, and she said, well, why don't we come here? And I threw my hat in the ring. And we had multiple talks. We had coffees. We had wine. We sat down and said, if you have a problem with me, if I have a problem with you, we talk it out. That's why we're so close. And I said, if you have a problem with me, just tell me, tell me, and we'll deal with it. About 6 weeks into my tour of 12 months, it all shattered. And she threw out all of the courtesies that I had given her, everything. And I tried desperately and to bring it back. And there was nothing I could do. And she told me there was nothing I could do, and to my face. So I thought, we have to get along for the next 10 months in a tight, stress-induced, adrenaline pumping environment. Yeah. And it was one of the toughest things that I've had to do out inside the base, let alone outside, where we would go out into the town and I was one of the only officers that was able to go and move about the town. And so there's a lot of risk there and everything. So I was dealing with that. Then I got back, and she would just try and completely tear me down for a lot of different reasons. And normally I don't take a lot of BS. Like you said, I'm BS waving.
Yeah.
I'm a natural redhead. And so I've been called a hothead. For that environment, I knew no one would be safe and no one would be able to get their work done. So I kept my mouth shut for a lot of it. And it was almost the ruin of me. But I just finally got finished out of it and walked away. It's very sad. So not only that was the pinnacle of two women who can't work together. I've seen it so much in my entire, I mean, I'm sure you did too. When I was elementary school growing up, I couldn't understand why these certain girls were doing certain things. And I would say, why can't I have more than one friend? Why are you yelling at me? Like,
Right.
right? I got
Yes,
that
oh,
all
I've
the
had
time
those.
growing
Yeah, I'm
up.
like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I signed a non-compete waiver here.
I used to say to them, honestly, and really, like, I
Yeah.
was serious, and I would say, "Are we dating?" Because I didn't know that. Is
Yeah.
that what this is? Because I
mean,
didn't realize I couldn't play with Susie over here on the.
yeah.
I don't understand. Boys aren't like that. And if we can, and that's what we're trying to teach our daughter now as well. Sports. If we can get our kids in this generation to be more sports and teams oriented, especially our girls,
Yeah, I
and the
love it.
conflict resolution, that they're all so prone to do anyway, and more cooperative games, and then leading into STEM programs. So that's a whole other story.
Yes.
But topic.
Yeah.
We can take what you and I believe that women can work together. It's just that right now we weren't raised. Our generation wasn't raised that way. If we can change it the way that they're coming up now, I think it'll be so drastically different in 10 years, 15.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think some of it, because I'm a studier, so I've kind of studied back, and it's like, okay, going back to the caveman times where, women were, we stayed at home and we took care of the camp, we took care of the family, we protected here, we were stronger together. So like literally women would, be in pods together and, look at keeping the kids safe, making sure that there was food to eat, taking care of the home team, so to speak. But then there was competition for breeding, and there's competition with the alpha male. And then if there's a camp with the alpha female, I mean, there's this whole, just like innate and inbred kind of rawness of being human. And then now we take all these genes and these behaviors, and we put us on a Zoom, we put us in a room, we put us in these little artificial environments. And I think that is what starts to kind of breed that. And then, yes, we hear from our mothers and our sisters and our aunts and all these, women role models who then do talk about this competition and implant these things like, well, you can't really count on other women. They're gonna steal your man. They're gonna do all this stuff. Like we keep this competition going, where when we realize that we're not necessarily in competition on that level anymore. It's not like that, but it's hard when it's so inborn and just bred into us.
It is as well. And when you're a single woman, in your 20s and even in your 30s and all that, and you're living in a highly populous area in a city, no matter the country, no matter the state, when you're living highly populous, there's a lot more women in a lot of these major cities. I'm from DC, and I started dating in high school, 16 years old when I was allowed to, 16 years old. And high school, college, that's fine. That was one thing. But getting out in my 20s in the Northern Virginia, DC area, back when I was dating, it was 6 women to every man.
Yeah.
And you put in the gay community as well. That's 8 women to every man. So that really changed the whole dynamic. And while I grew up with boys, all boys, I had to fight and scrap for what I needed to make as my own, what I got, even to eat, to speak, to be heard. That's why I speak really fast. Yes, that's why I speak so fast, trying to work on that. But yeah, it is so competitive because I was told, 8 women to every man. And in Virginia, when you're growing up, at least when I was growing up, there's that pressure to get married. And if you're not, then it's, oh, poor thing. Oh, you sad little. I was a case officer for the CIA, and I still felt depressed and a failure because some guy didn't, I look back and I look back and just shake my head and think, why did I do that? I fell victim to a lot of the pressures that our society puts on us.
Yeah, and they're all there. And I think if the more we can have these kinds of candid conversations and talk about that stuff and realize, oh yeah, like you dealt with that too. Oh, okay. So it's not just me. And I'm single now, and that has a whole other thing when you're in your 50s. I just turned 50, and it's this great space of, I'm coming into my own. I'm finally feeling like, yeah, I own this. Like this experience of my humanity is mine. And I
Yes.
love it. And I don't feel that I need someone to complete me. In fact, I'm like, oh, I don't even know. I don't feel like there's anything to complete. And that's the same for a partner. I don't want someone that I have to complete. And
Mhm.
that's been the hardest part of dating is so many people. It's like, you don't know who you are. You don't know what you stand for. You don't have a passion in the world. You and I are multi-passionate people. Like, it's impossible for me to even nail down a passion.
Right.
So like I need people that fan the flames of that for me and with me. And I don't know if I'll ever be just a one partner person for the rest of my life kind of thing. And I'm totally cool with that. And it's the first time I've really just surrendered into that instead of trying to, find someone or date someone or whatever it may be. I'm just loving
Good
not.
for you. I love it.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
I
But I
did
think,
notice,
we're taught all that, where we're taught that relationship does define us in a way.
and I did notice because I went from DC to California. I'm California now. I
Yeah.
won't say where, but
Yeah.
from the DC area, California, there's such a cultural shift that
Okay.
all the women I've met out here for the last 13 years,
Mhm.
I'd say all but maybe two,
Mhm.
maybe have. I mean, but they're all strong women. That's who I'm drawn to. But
Yeah, definitely.
all except maybe two have literally said, "Oh, I never wanted to get married. He changed my mind." Or
Mhm.
I have met some stalwart single ones that I'm still friends with, and say, "No, never. That's just not
Mhm.
for me. I'm having fun, and I will always have fun." And that's such a different. It's a cultural change for me that my jaw dropped when I first met them, and I got out here. I went, "Oh, I love you. This is so great." I never met
That's
anybody who
cool.
said that in
Right.
what 30
Okay.
plus years being in Virginia.
Yeah. And that's the other part is like we all come from these different areas and not even internationally, like different regions of this country,
Yeah.
different regions of the state. I'm in Florida. So like even different regions of the state were different. We have different backgrounds in religion or experiences or trauma. I mean, gosh, we could talk about that forever and how trauma, really just changes the filters through which we see the world and who perpetrated that trauma and were we ever able to process that trauma. All of those things really fit into it too. And it's like teaching our kids to talk about things is good. And sometimes though, kids, I have 3 teenage daughters, sometimes they don't want to learn from their mother.
I am
They
not
have to
looking
learn it
forward to those
elsewhere.
teenage years.
Oh, I will be here with wine and we will talk.
I'll
Because I
fly
have
out
been
to
there,
you.
done that, sister. Yeah. Yeah. But that's the other part too, is like, because we're so connected in this world, right? With, social media and how many connections we have and how many friends and all this stuff. I think we're more disconnected than ever as
Beyond.
humans,
Beyond.
as like the humanness within us and that humanity that we're able to link arms and, really protect others, especially those of us who are the protective type. It's very challenging to, kind of come to grips with how some of not only what we've been modeled, but what our society has set up for us, and this competition, the masculine versus the feminine, and how, we almost feel like we have to run away from the feminine to fit into this masculine driven world. But then you kind of come full circle, especially in this midlife space, and you think, you know what? I don't really buy all that stuff they're trying to sell me.
Yeah, I don't care. That's been
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
philosophy now for about a year or more. But I don't
I
care.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, there's a point where I don't have the energy for it. And I'm very much the same. Now you wrote about something a couple years ago and you shared this article with me and I just absolutely love it. And it's all about how, women, we're talking about all these things, we see everywhere, we got these movements about protect women and, stand up for women and women's rights and all these amazing powerful rights that we have, especially here in this country. Yet it's a lot of lip service,
Very.
really, and it's a lot of hoorah and everyone patting themselves on the back, like, oh, we just did this wonderful fundraiser and we raised all this money and all these things, but we're not changing anything about the way we operate in the world or what we really put our foot down against.
And it's political. So if you're on one team versus another, it's us versus them. I can't handle that. I just can't. And the being where I am and the companies that I've worked in, whereas when, and I will put it out there, our first female vice president, I think is a fantastic, amazing milestone in our country's development. Our first Black president. Oh my God, I cried too. I mean, so no, saying something that is critical of them is you're against them. Then that's not true. They're humans too. They are humans, and they are in the highest offices in our land, let alone our world and our planet, and they deserve scrutiny just as much as any white man, old white guy, just as much. And that's called true equality. And I can't handle I'm going to wear a pink hat and walk up and down the street and scream and yell and cuss and fuss because this guy who's on another team said something. Instead, organize your community for, feeding the homeless. Reach out to young girls that are runaways. Go to your community centers, find out any young girls that could be being groomed at these homeless shelters for human trafficking. And there's so many things you can do instead of brainwashing your own children to hold a sign and to dye their hair purple or whatever and say all these things that they don't understand, and you think you're making a difference. You know what? You're not. And I may be hurting or putting your audience, they may be turning off or not going to Dr. Sam Graber anymore, but that's how I am. This is my own views, and this is how it is. I don't have any patience for this anymore. The demonstrations and the marching and all that is something that this country is so unique in being able to do. Yes, they happen in Europe. They're happening right now because of the COVID lockdowns in Europe. And I'm 100% there for them. Australia, it's happening and all that. But when they were doing all this in 2017, it was because some guy they didn't like and the media told them to, but he was a bad man. Have more of a brain, women. We are wired better than this. And march to the Capitol and put together concrete and absolute resolutions to say the following needs to be done in a infrastructure bill. More needs to be given to women's health, reproductive, things, all these different things. There's so many things you can come up with and concrete things you can do. No, you just want to wear a pink hat and scream. I have no
and have a hashtag. Don't forget the hashtag.
Oh, because they're so important. They've done so much good work in the world. I can't.
And that's that place where, like, if people could learn to collaborate better and have something that has this concreteness to it, where it's okay, we're going to talk about this issue. And this is the whole thing with politics in general, is like there's just everything needs to be revamped. It's all a friggin' mess. Like, where do you start?
It needs an enema.
What's that?
It all needs an enema.
It all needs a total enema. I mean, it's incredible because it's just, and that's this holistic thinking, and why sometimes I drive myself even crazier, where I try to dissect an issue. Like when I was in the anti-human trafficking space, I don't want to be just one of those, and it's very common in that space of people being out there like, we need justice, we need all these things to happen, yet none, if very few of those organizations actually work together.
No.
There are like maybe 2 or 3 leaders that I met who I think really truly want to look at that and solve the issue, versus just toot their own horn and raise their own funds and go, look at me, I have another byline in a magazine or whatever. It just grossed me out after a year.
I heard that too. And the same is true for, and I don't mean to bash them because I stood there side by side with them. Our veterans groups that are trying to put together these nonprofits and do good things, veterans cannot get along either. It is the weirdest thing I have seen, because I'm not a veteran and I want to support. And so I've actually started to tip my hat into, and hey, I want to support here, or I want to go here. And I keep going to a different one each time because it's just so dysfunctional and they won't listen to someone like me, and that's fine. They don't have to. Nobody has to listen to me. I will offer kind of some advice to say, hey, in order to communicate better, I think the following should blah, blah, blah. We can get a better resolution if we go here versus there, and certain things like that. And nope, I'm not a veteran. So shut up and sit down. And we're just going to get a byline, and we're going to put a website together, and don't tell people that the GoFundMe page is actually for this, not that, yada, yada. And no, sorry, I can't be there for it. And that's why I'm not even volunteering anymore with anybody. I
Yeah.
can't do that. So it's not just women who can't get along. It's veterans can't get along. it's the human trafficking folks can't get along because it's a lot of ego. There's a
It
lot of ego
is.
out there. We need to put it aside.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And again, that kind of dials back to understanding ourselves better and understanding what an organization, what kind of identity an organization has, being real clear. I mean, I'm in the business coaching space now. So it's like when I talk to my clients, well, what are you in business for? To make money. Yeah. But like,
Yeah.
what do you do? And who do you do it for? And who are you? Like, what do you stand for? What are your no deals, your deal or no deals? And those kinds of things, like really truly knowing who you are. And I see that in the nonprofit space. Well, I just want to do good. I just want to help, XYZ. That's wonderful. But honestly, you can do a lot more hurt and harm out in the community.
Yeah.
And I would see this with the anti-human trafficking space again, where there was so much confusion as to what that term even means. And then next thing you know, you've got these people saying there's 147 kids were rescued, and what does that term even mean? And then are you really rescuing them? Are you just padding stats? What happens to these people and these children and these women and men after you quote unquote rescue them? All of these things. And so I think there just comes this point in your gut as a woman and as probably just as a human, but I only know the experience of a woman. Like we have these things that just don't sit with us, right?
Right.
And then you try to go out and help and you think, and being eights, we're the jump in first and then like, oh, maybe I should have thought about that a little bit.
All right.
Shoot.
Well, I did that as well when again the whole wanting to help. So we moved into this house that we're in now because we need a bigger home, because quite frankly, we're going to get real here. I couldn't have a second kid because of my PTSD and my postpartum. I mean, getting pregnant was not the issue at all. I got pregnant 6 weeks after we got married, and so we were like, "Oh, I'm very fertile," but the pregnancy was not the problem. It was the postpartum afterwards. I almost did not make it on my own. I can't handle the stories of the women who hurt their children. That never crossed my mind. In fact, I got more. I am more against that than I ever was before. Obviously, it was against me, thinking I'm a bad mom. She's better off without me, that sort of thing. And having another one going through that again, I couldn't do it. So we moved into this house in order to go into the foster care, foster to adopt. That's what we were going to do. I was dead set on it. I was my social work degree, my wanting to help, the whole thing. And I started doing research into the foster care system here in the state. And then not only that, I started to ask people around here that had experience in it. And we backed off real fast. It's and I'm not going to be brought up on slander or anything like that, but for us and what research that I have done and what the conclusion that I came to is that it is completely rotted out from the core, and it needs to be flushed out completely.
Systems, yes.
It has to be. It is one of the leading human trafficking organizations. It pipeline into, I'm not saying it is the leading, I'm saying it's a pipeline to the human trafficking. It is unbelievable the amount that's happening. 2020 just did a special with the Turpin, I think it's what their last name was, the Turpin children. There's 13 or 15 of them that were rescued here in California in Riverside. And the hell they're still going through because of the system failing them now. They were actually tortured, all of them, grossly so. And they're now being tortured by not being able to have proper foster homes that are helping them. And having court-appointed guardians. This is all in the show. Court-appointed guardians who won't let them have their money. It's unbelievable what's happening. I can't even take it anymore. Well, we're leaving the state too, so that's a good thing. I can't take it. I'm not saying any other state's going to be better for that. I don't know. We're past that. But foster care system in probably all 50 needs to be reviewed and really burn down and build back up.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'd often say that burn it all down, burn it to the ground, because you have to do that. Yeah. Because some things just can't be fixed.
No.
They just can't be. And it's a system that was brought up at whatever time that came to be in our our country. It served a purpose there, but then if we just keep patching it and piecemealing this and adding this to it and a little chewing gum and stick it there, we're not really doing anything any good. And there's so much money. The vetting
for these families, it's just not happening, because they're saying there's a loss of budget or there's not enough to do a thorough vet and things like that. And I'm going, no, there is. You just don't want to do it. I mean,
Yeah,
our school district
mismanagement.
here, our school district alone, that's not foster care, but it's the school district is paying for 2 superintendents. And I can't even tell you the amount of money they make. Oh, it is phenomenally out of control. 2,
Oh,
you know why? Because one, the school board actually pushed him out and then said, we're going to give you, I think it's 1 to 2 years severance of his yearly salary. So he still gets paid.
nice. I
Almost,
don't, man, I got to talk to my boss
yeah,
about that junk. I'd like
200,
to fire myself.
250,
Wow.
260,000. And then they brought in at a higher rate, a second one.
Nice.
Yeah. So that we have no school bus here either because there's no money, but
No
yet
money. Yeah.
there's money to pay 2 superintendents, one that doesn't even work there anymore. So, yep, you want to talk about misaligned priorities. My article talks about that too.
Yes. Well, and that's it. And it's like all these things. It's another BS flag. Throw it in there because it literally is. And that's across the system. But that's also part of America where, yeah, we are privileged. And, we're not going to get into the whole race thing. Well, we probably will. Who knows? But it's like we're not going to get into a lot of those details. But we do have the privilege of these rights that many people have fought and died for.
Yep.
For us to be able to do this, for us to be able to have this conversation. You and I, as 2 women, 2, white women of all things, having conversations and calling out some stuff that is probably going to, raise some hairs on people's neck. But honestly, if we don't talk about stuff in the reality that it is and share our experience and not be like, my experience is more important than yours. My experience means more, or, one-upping each other, like I see a lot in the trauma space and even the trauma-informed space. It's like, well, my trauma is not as bad as hers, or like my PTSD isn't as bad as hers, so mine really doesn't count.
I do that all the
Try.
time. I do it all. My husband just, oh my gosh, he goes, would you stop it? Because I would always say, why would I have residual physical stuff from Iraq or Afghanistan? I wasn't on the front line.
Sure.
I wasn't there. I didn't kid up every day. I didn't go into battle. And he was sitting there going, oh dear God.
Brain doesn't
but
know.
but you did. And I'm going, no, I didn't. And we would actually have these back and forths. And he kept saying your fight or flight was up for an increasingly long amount of time, 2 years.
Sure.
And that is the wear and tear on the nervous system and your chemicals and all that. And and my own counselor had to tell me that too. And another thing that and this is something that women in our country can't really have that kind of experience unless they throw themselves into some work similar to this. And I encourage everyone to. As an adult, I've held the hands of particularly one 15-year-old girl who had a toddler on her hip who was sold into terrorist leader's marriage. She was his 4th wife. And we found her and we took her in and tried to do everything we could for her, but we couldn't quote keep her because she's not an enemy combatant, and all we could do was help. And I can't tell you how much I cried and cried and cried. 15, her father gave her to him, and that's just one of millions. As pictures are coming out now of the young girls in Afghanistan, which I'm having a very hard time with because I lived there for a year. Very hard time with these 8-year-olds, these 9-year-olds. My own daughter, can you imagine your own daughter at 9? Being given to some 60-year-old to breed, to be some kind of monkey breeding, mule breeding. That's exactly what they do. And we've told those women, those young girls, we as a country have told them, we don't care about you. And that's very hard for me to swallow. I don't just care about women here in our country and that's it. It's worldwide. And to know what they're going through over there, and to see how we whine and cry here, I have a hard time. I can't deal with it very well.
Yeah. And there does come that point where it's just, the biting of the tongue, the bleeding inside, you're tasting your own blood practically, right? Where you're just like
all the time.
Do I want to have friends? I like friends. I'm not sure if I like these friends. But yeah, it is very challenging. But also we're not taught this conflict resolution. We're not taught any way of, or modeled this, any way of getting along and really listening, because oftentimes we listen to respond. We see that a lot in personal, relationships, but in business, on social media anymore, where you can just literally be a total flaming asshole. Let's just call it what it is. And no one calls you on it. Or if they do, they just block you. And you just don't there's none of this interrelational stuff going on. Yeah. There's no really truly listening where someone's coming from and maybe knowing a little bit about their past or what they know or don't know. because both of those are, of equal importance at the right time. And all of it fits together.
I left Facebook about a year and a half ago and I never looked
Yeah,
back.
I'm off too. I know. The only reason I have it is because I have a couple people I have to catch up with every once in a while, but that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel the
this
same.
tsunami of ignorance and
Yes.
hate and
Oh,
people, and mostly the
divisive.
people that I knew literally in real life. And the things that they were just flowing out and that was coming out of them, I just thought there's so much toxicity and so much hate inside you. I didn't know it. I can't be around that.
Yeah.
I struggle every day to make sure I have some kind of positivity, not only for myself, but for my family, especially for our daughter. And because when I see all this negativity, it takes me down so much faster than it used to because of I'm exhausted.
Yes. Right.
Freaking
Adrenals are
exhausted.
shot, man.
Yes.
Oh, totally.
And knowing and seeing what I've seen and seeing how history is repeating itself, it's
Mhm.
just, it makes me want to give up. It makes it
Mhm.
not give up, but lay down and just not come out of this room for about 3 days.
Yeah.
But I can't do that. None of us
well,
can do that.
we get compassion fatigue too, right?
Oh,
Like
that's a
that's a
good
real
term.
thing. Yeah. Where it's just I just literally can't care about anything else. I care, but I can't assign it to anything else because there's nothing left there.
Yep.
But then that when we spread it too thin, we can't go deep enough on any true issue. And that's like you had mentioned too, where you're not volunteering right now. I'm kind of in that same space where it's been good since I left ATII to just exhale and go, okay, what did I learn? Did a little SWOT analysis for myself. It's like, where are my strengths? What did I gain in strengths from there? What weaknesses did definitely came to light? And then what opportunities can I now, maybe pay this forward in or sit and kind of reflect on? And then what are the threats to me as a person? Because for so long I was always give. I think because, I didn't feel that I was worthy of receiving in a way. I was never really taught that, or I just I got so much worth in my own bank account, my human bank account when I gave. It's like you get a lot of praise and, all these wonderful things. And you think, oh, I'm an achiever and I'm making stuff happen and it feels good. But then there comes a point where, I didn't know really who I was except for these little roles that I had, but I didn't know. When people say, well, what do you really, really want in your life? I'm like, oh, don't ask me that. Go to them. Like, I really don't know. And that was wild to me to not know even the most basic of things about myself. Like, what do I really like to do? I don't know. I used to like to paint. I used to like these things. I didn't know, I was just giving to others and it felt good. But then, that whole you can't give from an empty cup thing, that's a real thing.
It is.
So true.
It is.
And when
especially
you're
as
out saving
mothers.
the world. Oh yeah. Dial in a little more to quote what you felt like as a mother and now, looking at the world and seeing what's going on. And I mean, how does that affect you, a mother of a daughter? I mean, that's the thing. I got three daughters.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
It's totally different. I remember every once in a while, I think back to flashes of being in the war zones. And even before that, in the intelligence work itself, when you're even sitting in Northern Virginia at headquarters and these things would come through there, pictures you got to look at there because there's proof of things. There's all this videos that were brought to us, especially in the counterterrorism world. And I always had that kind of hurt space right here in my chest whenever I'd see it. But for some reason, I guess because I didn't have the life experience, that it was kind of compartmented. I was able to shut it down and go, all right, now what we have to do is we got to find that guy. What's he wearing? What are characteristics? What are, different things? I was analyzing it, hard analysis and seeing what's happening to the young girls when they were doing that, the beatings the videos that we would get, and all those things, the sex slave markets, and seeing that hurt right there. And it would go away. But now it's an absolute gut. It's in my gut. I double over. I have a physical, visceral reaction to it. And I can't look at these things. But then at the same time, my husband keeps telling me too, he's like, oh, turn it off. And the thing is, we turn it off. It doesn't mean it's gone. It means that we have turned our back on that poor girl. It means and if I do that, I know I'm turning my back. So it's a double-edged sword. And what we can do, and we got to find the right group, 501c3 or whatever, that's actually doing the actual work inside those countries or counties or even districts in the US and all those things. Go and ask, these girls who are going on these marches, ask to go on a ride along for your local police. See what they deal with and tell them what they can do better, because you have
Yeah,
so much in your
I know.
mind that you want to
Apparently know
say
it all.
and fix, you
Yes.
little know-it-all. You tell them
Right.
what they can do better and let them see the
Right.
amount of homeless that they get off the street, the
Oh my
amount
God.
of teenage runaways that they deal with on a nightly basis. So those types of things, start building there. These young girls, build there. And I'm actually, when my daughter becomes a late teenager, early 20s, I'm going to encourage her to do that. I'm like, yeah, go on a ride along with police officer. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're leaving this state, so it's going to be probably better where we're going anyways.
Yes, it will be. I think, and we know a few people over there that you can get a ride along with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I agree. And that's the other part, is like, live in someone's shoes. I mean, there all these sayings, they're sayings for a reason. Walk a mile in a man's shoes to really understand what his life is like. You
Yeah.
know, we need to do more of that and put ourselves in other people's situations. And also a lot of that starts at home, though, with ourselves, and realizing, okay, you've been through this, you've been through that, you've triumphed here, you've fallen down there, you still haven't forgiven yourself for that. It's like doing that inventory of our own lives so that we can clear that slate for ourselves and really be able to give from a place where we have something to offer,
Yeah.
and then help other people come along into that space. And that's why I love coaching so much, is because I get to work with the willing. You know, people they're not voluntold to come work with me.
Right.
They volunteer to come work with me, and they pay for it with their time and their energy and their tears and their vulnerability, which is my favorite. I love when people get raw and real. Like, that is the best gift anyone can give me. And that's one of those things, like, I've learned, because of all the things I've worked through, I've learned how to be a stand for other people, men and women. And they know that whatever you say is a vault. And I think
Yes.
that's something that is a gift to share with others. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to do for, others, but also ourselves. And that place of forgiveness, and all of those things, to just help heal a lot of that past trauma, and help heal us as a nation. When we heal individually, I think we heal as a family, we heal as a community, we heal as out from there. And
I'm
that's a
working
lot
on
of
that
it.
myself. I don't know if I'll ever get there. I really don't think so.
I hear that.
And I think, honestly, I'm okay with that at this point,
Mhm.
because I'm going to have to be.
Mhm.
And the way that I'm trying to work towards that is cutting certain people out of my life that are
Mhm.
family, that are blood family,
And
that I've realized are toxic. And that's okay too. I've done a lot of research and reading about certain personality disorders, and one in
Sure.
particular, and that if you have a family member that is diagnosed, that the most and the best advice that I've gotten from these journals, from these books that I've been reading, I throw myself into something if I don't know about it, and it
Me
affects
too.
me.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's really learn, how to approach this. And the especially when it comes to, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, psychopathy,
Mm.
a psychopath in your family.
Yeah.
They're very, very common. I'm not saying a serial killer. I'm saying
Yes.
someone
Yeah.
who has the psychopathic traits,
Right.
that, of a CEO, of a, things
Yes,
like that.
absolutely.
They gaslight you, they
Type
manipulate
8s, we
you.
can definitely be that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And the best advice I got was, you either give them the gray pebble, which is don't give them anything, make yourself a gray pebble, or you walk away. And I don't think that enough. There's so much in our society saying, oh, you have to forgive, and move on and heal. Well, you are healing, but there's this conception that you have to heal with that person, with that abuser. I don't think that's true. You don't have to. And
No.
especially at our age, I mean, I'm going,
Yeah.
I don't need this anymore. What I've read shows it's okay to walk away. Even the experts are saying that. I'm
Mhm.
going to have to walk away. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying I'm celebrating it. I'm saying I'm mourning it
Yeah.
every single day. And I wish it could be different, but there's no changing a brain pattern like that. It's an actual diagnosis, and it's a brain pattern of which I am now going to make my decisions based on that scientific evidence. Got it. And then I'm the bad guy. So don't.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I hope your audience can take away, they're not necessarily the bad guy if you make that decision.
No, yeah, no. And in my space, as you know, my space is always a safe space. And if people, I can hear anything, I can listen to anything, I can sit and hold space for anyone on anything. And I empower people to be that, because we do need to take that for ourselves. And we don't learn those. We don't have that skill set built into us. It's always about how do I do with everyone else? Again, our relationships, that's how women are valued in our society and the world. And they're not even valued in most places of the world. And I know we could go down that rabbit hole very quickly. And some of that happens here. You know, we have child brides here.
Yep.
And I hate that term, but it's just like we have these constructs that continue to just make women's value based on their ability to breed.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a whole other wormhole, basically, because then women get to a place of, what if I didn't breed? What if I didn't serve my purpose? What if I couldn't get pregnant? Or what if I got pregnant and kept losing the babies? You know, like all these things. And then that puts more damage into us and more harm that we internalize. And, you know, then there's that past generational trauma, you know, that you're talking about with your family, and what can be a physical and a chemical thing, but then also there's trauma that gets passed down from generation to generation, you know, where we've come from or what we've exposed ourselves to, or, you know, what the people around us have been exposed to. Everything's energy. And when it all, you know, culminates, it can be powerful, and it can also, you know, be powerful on a good side, and it can be very powerful on a very negative side.
Yeah. I've got a lot of the negative stuff.
Yeah, I can use a little more of the positive, but I think, you know, sometimes like I feel like we've been exposed to this, or we've experienced these things to be a listening ear, or, you know, a place where we hold space for others, because we can hear that stuff and we won't crumble, you know,
Right.
even though sometimes you hear things and you think, wow, how did these people live through this? And then you just realize the resiliency of the human spirit, and how if we could just work together and, you know, create some effective change and really get real change in this country, instead of just more patchwork and, you know, more promises and empty promises from politicians that are just looking to get reelected. And the dingy part is we keep reelecting them.
Yeah.
You know,
Don't get me started.
hello.
Jesus Christ.
You know, and then the people go, well, I don't vote because there's no one to vote for. And I'm like, come here. I'm gonna slap you, like through the Zoom. I'm slapping you.
Yeah, that's not even as bad. It's worse.
Yeah.
And it's a slap in the face to all of the immigrants who are losing their lives just to swim over here on their own in shark infested waters. There's no other country that does that. We have plenty of things to be critical about of it. There's plenty of things that need to be fixed. There's plenty of things to say, hey, we need to criticize this and we need to criticize that. There's plenty of leaders to criticize as human beings and to make them better, not to tear them down because they're a certain gender or they're a certain race. Get out of my face with that. I can't take that anymore. I can criticize the top two seats in the United States and the entire world. They're leading the free world. And if you think it's simply because of her genitalia or his color, you don't know me at all. And you don't respect that office enough. Even if when there was an orange guy in, I did the same thing. I said, well, that was stupid. Well, that needs to be fixed. Why is he going that route? Just as critical. And people think, oh, well, Erin's just now, you know, she's this or she's that because she said this about, you know, the Democrats or the Republicans or something. I consider myself an independent to say I will vote for anyone who speaks to my issues. And my issues are a lot of the female issue stuff, and national security and being financially responsible. What's so party line about that? There shouldn't be.
There shouldn't be, right?
That's all of us.
Right. Absolutely. And that's the divisiveness, though. And that's the us versus them. And that's all this media, like shenanigans and craziness, absolute craziness of which way is the wind blowing? Okay, so that's the way we're going this time. And who's on our sponsor list this week? Oh, okay, right. Okay, so we're being paid by these guys. I mean, but again,
like
right. It's like, but we as the people are just not. We're not holding them accountable.
No.
And we're also participating in this, you know, beating down of good people that are trying to run and trying to become leaders and maybe willing to stick their neck out. Whereas I'll often say jokingly, but seriously, I'd rather buy me a politician than be one, you know. I just got to work on making the money first. But it's like, you know, I'd rather buy me one because I don't want to be out in the limelight. Oh my God.
No, I don't.
You're going to go back and look at all my past. I mean,
you can't
are you
with
kidding me?
Yeah. I wouldn't be qualified to run.
I did. Well, plus I carry like, I'd be a mess. I'd be an awful in dealing with any of that stuff because I don't deal with the bullshit very well.
Yeah.
I'd be like fisticuffs with people.
Yeah, me too. Me too. all my sound bites would be probably worse than Trump's. His are pretty bad. His are
They're pretty
bad.
bad.
Absolutely. No doubt about that one. There's no doubt. But yeah, for your listeners who are interested in any of that, I do and have for the last 10 years followed the money. And that is a big passion of mine. And there are so many published books that are legit and that you can do some research, follow the money of the different books that are out there, these people that have published the trails and the investigative journalists who have done that work to say this money went to this campaign, but only 1% got into the campaign. The rest of it went to their nonprofit. Interesting. Their nonprofit didn't spend a dime on that 26-year contract that they had in that other country. That's interesting. So putting those kind of dots together and reading for yourself and making those types of decisions for yourself, that research, it's going to come back to you in spades. You're going to be so much more well-versed. You'll know how to vote better. You'll know what issues more important to you, what's not important. You will be able to cut through your own red tape. And I can't stress that enough. Follow the money in the books that are already published out there. And I'm not going to tell you which ones, because you're going to say, oh, that's a party line, or that's a party line, or that's this.
Right.
Do your own research. See, pick of some politician you want to say, I wonder if there's any books out there on Ted Cruz. Where's his money going? Or look up. Also, there's not FOIA requests. There's hard ones to get, but there's a lot of information out there about campaign finance. You can look up where your politician's money is going. You can do it yourself. It's open source. And
It is.
for them not to do that is just blows my mind. Simply because they have a D or an R behind their name.
Yeah,
That's it.
right. Well, true. Yes. And that's why I have an I, because ever since the day I could register, I've always been an I, which sucks sometimes because I can't do the primary. But I just that's just how I am. I'm fiercely independent. And that's what I teach my clients. And, talking about following the money, when you look at nutrition policy, oh my good Lord, follow the money. And when you look at what's being recommended and what's done to our food, and the fact that this is the one country that still allows all these pesticides and herbicides, drowning our food in it, our food, and then pulverizing it and processing it. And then we call ourselves this great nation that, we have all these safety protocols in place. I tell you, if we just go back to real food from regenerative farms and support those farmers, we could turn our health around in an instant. But people are looking for that next quick fix, and that's the detrimental part. And we're looking for that on politics level. We're looking from relationship level, health level. It's like, wow.
We've got to talk more about maintaining our own health in this country. If there's one thing that this whole pandemic has caused is looking into your mental health, like you mentioned, and then, but what will help your mental health, which has always helped for me, is getting that exercise. Get your get out 30 minutes every day to walk in your neighborhood, up and down the street. If you don't have a great neighborhood, try and get some kind of cheap treadmill and go in your garage or anything like that. Get some cardio. Get some cardio. Yoga. Yoga has been yes. Yoga has been a lifesaver for me. I couldn't do it in my 20s because it was too boring for me. I'm like getting anything from this. I gotta go. I gotta run. And I would do that. Now, oh my gosh, I can barely function my day without starting it. And no one is talking about cutting the fat down on your body. It also helps the chemical levels in your brain. It will help your mental health. And you take that time and you can start really critically thinking about your day, your life, your decisions. That's what I do.
Mindful. Yes.
Mindful. Absolutely. And then you're in a much better place to start your day or end your day. And we're not talking about that. And that is another disservice we're paying everyone. Let's talk more about getting fit.
Yes.
Not because I'm like this big, great, I got about 20 more pounds to lose. I get it. I understand, but I just get out there as much as I can, at least 4 or 5 times a week and on the treadmill or outside to try and walk or run. And once we start doing that, then it would be amazing. The turnaround our country will have.
Well, yeah. And the mental health that comes from that alone, and then putting on muscle from being physically active. The body is your brain transport system. And you'll hear me say that over and over in my world, where we have to take care of it, but we have to feed our brain. And, everything you eat, think, drink, sleep, or don't sleep, everything you do is your diet. So looking at our diet as to, what am I taking in? What kind of media am I looking at? What kind of food? The foundation is always real food. and looking at how did it look, does whatever you're eating look like it did when it was alive, whether it was a plant or an animal. And those are the only two things you should be eating in my mind.
Yeah.
Plants and animals, that's it. Like all this processed stuff, if it's made in a lab, don't eat it. If you can't pronounce the, all the ingredients on it and you don't know where it comes from, don't eat it. Go again, look at the farmers, look them in the eye and see where those animals came from and how those animals lived. And if they were able to express their animalness and they weren't, there wasn't all these horrible things going on to them. They weren't pumped full of antibiotics and all these, growth hormones. Like we eat that. And then that messes with this and everything else.
I will say that you were talking about the chemicals. It's just, there is still part of that, but I'm sure any of your listeners might be saying, okay, much easier said than done. Click, I'm off. I can't do that so easily. But I will say, when I was single and struggling to make ends meet and living in a 800-foot, 1-bedroom apartment in Northern Virginia, and that was lucky because I always had to have roommates before that because I couldn't even afford that. And I finally was able to afford my own place to live, one little tiny place. I realized when I would go to the grocery store, I realized that produce cost a hell of a lot less than that sugary BS that I was picking up, or the prepackaged meals. I had tons of sodium and I didn't even realize that. I thought, wait a minute, I could make 3 days worth of these meaty salads with some grilled chicken to throw in there. And that's like $10 versus the 50 that I could barely afford just to get these prepackaged meals. I mean, so if you're saying it's easier said than done, well, I've been there. I've lived it. I know what I'm talking about. It started going that way and okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. And when you don't eat as much because you're actually getting nourished by the food that you're eating, I mean, there's like all of that. And then you look at the packaging and it's the plastics that are, taking over our world. And we're seeing all this byproduct of plastics.
Yeah. Oh, and the masks that are flooding our oceans.
Oh, don't even, I know. Oh, when I see a mask around, I'm like, what the son of a. I probably curse sometimes out loud, but it's like, just being discarded. Yeah.
Oh, they are. They're everywhere here. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
They're on the ground. When I ran this morning, I can't tell you how many I counted. Yeah, but this is supposed to be the land of the eco-friendly people, right? They're all green. They're all hippie, green. And they're all they love their planet so much. But I think I counted over 25 this morning, just in my neighborhood alone, on the ground. Are you
running a marathon every morning?
Well, it's about 3 miles around my neighborhood.
That's a marathon as far as I know.
So I just take one scoop around and there's a ton of them. The hypocrisy is deafening.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's another, I mean, going down the human trafficking, you and I have learned about the supply chains. And I mean, I thought I was semi-aware before a couple of years ago getting into this space. And now I'm so aware that it's, you can't turn it off. Like I trace back, okay, well, where did, I don't wear a lot of makeup, but when I do, if I want to know that I'm getting it from a company that does not contain mica, that is from, a country where they have children in these mines, picking out the mica, and clothing. Like, where are you getting your clothing from, people?
You want to hear the most egregious, hypocritical story ever
I could ever come
up with? Yes. Oh my God, I felt so bad. Well, no, I didn't feel bad. I lost my mind in the store. This is my 20s something. I had a roommate. And he was a gay guy. We loved each other. We were Jack and Karen from Will and Grace. We were a hellstorm everywhere we went. Absolutely.
Oh my God.
And we were in DC. Yeah, we were in DC proper. And we were going to one of his clubs that night. And we had dinner and we walked down the street. He said, "Oh, I wanted to stop in here. My friend works here." And it was the Human Rights Commission store. A little shop there, and it was kind of under, like, because in DC there's a lot of like row homes that get changed into shops and things like that. It's so quaint. I just love the architecture. Cool. And I said, "Oh, it's down here." So we go down and we walk in. There's lots of trinkets, lots of shirts, lots of, and then there's a lot of artwork on there to promote human rights and equality and gay rights and things like that. And I was all about it. And I'm like, absolutely, what should we buy? So, and I'm walking through and this is the first time that Dennis and I actually had a nice tub in our apartment. So we're like, so we saw this
fancy.
We had a fancy tub. And so we saw these big rubber duckies and we were instantly drawn to them. And we go walking over and I said, "Should we get some rubber duckies for the bathroom?" And I go and pick them up and I go, "These are so cute." And they were kind of loud and said, "Of course we should have loud rubber duckies. It's us." And so the guy started to walk over, his friend actually started to walk over to say, "Oh, hey," recognized him. And he starts to walk over and I look at, and I turned it upside down for some weird reason. I don't know why. I did this, Sam. And it said, made in China,
Mm-hmm.
made in China. And I went, wait, hold on. Why is this hitting me so weird? And then I started looking at the shirts. I started looking at the tags, made in China. I started looking at the straws and the tumblers and every single thing in there was made in China. And I looked at this poor friend of
poor thing.
Dennis's, and
I feel sorry for him already.
for this big, and I just started like almost shake, and I go, human rights, made in China. And I said, do you know that your stuff is made by slave labor, a communist regime? Like I started, and Dennis had to literally take me by the shoulders and go, okay, we're leaving now. He said, I'll call you later.
Go out of here.
I mean, I wasn't like, I knew that this guy who was young and, needed a job in retail. I get it. And he had nothing, he didn't do anything wrong. And I knew I wasn't taking it out on him, but I had to say it. It was coming out of me.
I know.
This is the biggest hypocrisy. I can't even stand it. I just, and that was back in like 2002, 2003, something like that. So, well, obviously it's far worse now, but that was when I first started going, some light bulbs are going off here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then looking at the supply chain of it all and how did that get to us? And then people say, well, it's just cheaper. It's cheaper. Oh, like that all of a sudden makes it better. And that all of a sudden takes away all the horror that these people have gone through, and it makes it okay. Like, do you need 40 pair of shoes?
Yeah, I know, right?
And do you like all your clothes and just all this stuff? And it's insane to me.
Nike and Reebok, so that Colin Kaepernick and LeBron James can make more millions of what they already do about talking about oppression. Talk for a company and companies who have slave labor making those products. So let's talk about hypocrisy.
I mean, what if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it, right? But that's just more of that. Like if people would just really think a little bit before espousing more of the rhetoric that's not true, and do a little due diligence. I mean, from a due diligence expert there, right? Where you're like, yeah, I mean, you look at it from this high level, there's so many things we can do on our own. Know where our food comes from. Number one, like just know what you're putting in your mouth and what you're feeding your family, and understand that so many chronic diseases are the result of what we're eating and then what we're getting too much of and not enough of. It's like that whole gamut. Same thing with just showing up in the world and being part of a community. Are you really part of a community, or are you just you've just got a badge that shows you live there, and are you really contributing, or are you just a consumer? Are you just a caterpillar just chomping away, or are you actually creating something in the world? And do a little gut check. And if you don't feel like you're doing good in the world or doing something of value, find something of value and do it. Just start small even. And maybe most people should start by just shutting up, right? Like some of it is like, just zip it. Because
we have 2 ears for a reason and one mouth. Yes, that's what we tell our daughter.
Yes. And sometimes I need to remind myself.
Me too.
But yes, it's like, right, where it's okay. Am I adding, does this need to be said? Is it going to add to the conversation? Is it going to make things better? Or is it just going to fuel a fire that I don't even really know where that fire started? Find something that can help, and literally go help. If you, like you mentioned, get involved in your community and find an organization that you can trust and you can contribute to, or help just a single, parent family, because there's single men and women out there trying to raise kids. That's hard. Like you were a single person in a larger environment, and it was hard to make ends meet.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine, like, I sometimes wonder how people do it. I've been in that stressful strain of a situation. And it's like, you just make it happen. But then
our neighbor has 3. She's a widow, and she has 3.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine how she does that, even though she lives right next to us. Whatever we can do to help, we always try, without being overly, without, we're so blessed that that's all I have as far as my compassion. What would you call it? You called it the compassion something, or the fatigue. Yeah. That's all I've got right now, because this pandemic and the last at least 2, let alone 4 to 5 years, have shown what a lot of people truly are, what they really are.
Yes.
And they have shown themselves, at least to me in my community. So I have gone inward, and I did a lot of soul searching and said, am I going to have this in my life? And then around the same time, she was doing the same thing, saying, oh, you're going through that? Oh my God, I am too. And so we really bonded, and we have them over constantly. We take the kids to school back and so to help her out, things like that. But that's all we can do. We can't. I would love to go further out into the community and do more. We just can't. It's
But
not. It's
that's,
not
you
emotionally
know,
safe here either.
no, but I encourage you to just kind of stop with that last part, prior to that, like that's what we do. And that is contributing. And that's meaning the whole world to that woman. And that's another part where like we always feel we should be doing more. And I mean, I do the same, like I have all these skills and all this experience and all this talent and all this love to give. I should be doing more. But then I remind myself, stop shitting on yourself, because there's only so much, right? Like, wow, doing something that's meaningful is a beautiful thing. And healing is one of the best things that for ourselves that we can do for the world too, and for everyone in our world. Instead of going out there and getting our blood all over and our bleeding and our trauma and our ooey gooey gross stuff, like why not heal it, or at least be in the process of it? Because
Right.
I agree with you. I don't think you're ever healed. It's not like, they slap you on the forehead, you are healed. It doesn't work that way. I
Yeah.
wish it did. I'd be slapping people everywhere.
Yeah. Right.
But it just doesn't work that way. But if we're all just in it together, I think that's the good part.
And if we, if we're going to wrap this up, then I
Yeah.
honestly feel like, for takeaways for your members here, if they can work on their physical activity, stay fit, do something, because it helps your mental
Mhm.
and helps you reflect and go inward to be able to be analytical, and to read as much as possible, read and write. Because if you can get your mental health and your
I
physical
like
health
that.
into a particular area of
Mhm.
where you're striving towards, then you get your mental as well when you read whatever book. I mean, I my goal this year was to get 20 books
Nice.
done from January. I've just started book 18. I'm hoping I can get 2 done in December. So I
Cool.
booked 18. That's my goal. I also got certified in the financial crime specialist category. So I guess I could put another one on there. Maybe there's 19. But anyway, for my studying, reach a goal, get a goal, read, write, set a goal, and physical health attributes to your mental health
I love that.
for
Well, you
any
could
age.
like coach with me right here, right now,
I hope
right?
so.
We could take this show on the road.
Let's do it.
Yeah, yes. And I love it. And thank you, Erin. And I just appreciate your time, and I can't wait for our next call. It probably won't be recorded, but I thought it was just be so much fun. And thank you for just showing up, and,
Thank
and
you.
talking very, very real with me, and allowing other people into that. And I hope everyone who's, with us to this very last point will just kind of listen and sit with some of what we said. And sure, and there are going to be things that we say that get a little burr under your saddle. Totally fine. I love that. I don't ever want someone to be like, oh, everything Sam says is just, yep, absolutely. I want you to think about what you really feel, and I think that's one of your gifts for the world is think about things and really like let it sit in your gut. What does that mean to you? So thank you for everything, and I'll catch you up with you very shortly. Stay
Yeah.
on just after we end here, but thank you all for being part with us of our first candid conversation. There will be others, and thank you for just tuning in.